Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are joined by Larry Nemecek, also known as Dr. Trek. Am I right?
If you want to, that's cool.
If
You want to just create that right now, that's great, Ryan. That's great. No,
You're not opposed to it, I'm sure.
No.
Before we start, I just want to tell a very quick story, which is you and I have known each other for I don't even know how long, probably somewhere around a decade, known each other pretty well, maybe 5 or 6 years where we spent a lot of time together on the set of Star Trek Continues as two Tellarites for that fun day at Laurel Canyon Stages. But about 2 or 3 years ago, I just was kind of cleaning stuff up, and I found some old book that I'd had for God knows how long. Somebody got me a book for, I know. You know where this is going.
I didn't know where, but okay.
There it is.
Old Blue.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the Star Trek Next Generation Companion, a complete show-by-show guide to the Smash television series. Includes over 150 photos.
In black.
By Larry Nemecek, but that's the important part.
Yeah.
By Larry Nemecek. And I was like, oh, nuts. I guess I do have some Larry Nemecek stuff. Good job.
See, you couldn't get away. We were everywhere. In the era of Dead Tree Media, we were everywhere. So, yeah.
Oh, I get it. Books and papers. So can you tell us real quick about kind of where that came from, the idea for that book? I mean, did somebody give you the idea, or did you just say, you know what, nobody's doing it yet, I want to do it?
Well, that came out of, I'd been a Star Trek fan since my 9th grade teacher put me onto it, but I was a history buff and a NASA kid and all this. And I'd always, back before we had labels for all this stuff and buzzwords, but I'd always gravitated to behind the scenes and now what you'd say like canon collecting, okay? And I had a million interests. I had a life beyond Star Trek, but I was really attracted to like cataloging the stars. And I don't mean the actors, I mean the stars. And all the behind the scenes stuff, background stuff. And I did that self-published that on my own. And about 2 years in, crossed paths with Richard Arnold at a convention. And he had a cow over my self-published encyclopedia, basically, before Memory Alpha.
To have a cow for those of you that weren't around in the 80s means to say like throw a fit or be unhappy about.
Is have a cow like that, Dave? Wow. Okay.
Feels like it.
Okay. There you go. Keep me honest. Yeah. Somebody's going to say, I'm with PETA and that's not PC to have a cow and you're a human or something.
I like PETA and I'm fine with it.
I can just see it coming out of somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. No. But yeah, they had a fit, but they had a good fit. It was like, oh my God, this is great, because all they had they had B. Joe Trimble's original concordance episode guide for the original series and the animateds, but there was nothing for Next Gen, and they were 2 and 3 years in, and the only thing that they could do, and they had turnover, right? So there was like no memory, and their assistants would have to go and pull scripts out of the script file and just sit there and thumb through and double check, whatever. And that's how, mistakes get made. So anyway, they glommed on to my early first generation encyclopedia I was just publishing as a zine. And they kept saying, we got to get this guy. This guy's got to do this, for Pocket. It's got to be a book. And about the same time, Gene, before he passed, had gotten Mike and Denise, who were, and Rick Sternbach, but who were all very, very, very sneakily working all of this like all this stuff that people would love later on, all this stuff into the acutograms and all that. But they were tracking years and tracking ships and tracking a lot of continuity that the writers didn't care, they weren't keeping up with. And they were writing their tech notes, which they kind of were keeping up with. Anyway, they had gotten a deal with Pocket to do an encyclopedia. So there was no need to do an encyclopedia. So Pocket looked at me after everybody kept pushing it, and they said, well, can you do an episode guide? Like a making of. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, can you do it in 3 months? And you guys, if you're an actor and you're on audition and you've got the part, and then they go, oh, by the way, you can scuba dive, right? And you go, yes, of course I can.
Of course I can.
Of course I can do that.
In 3 months? Yeah.
Of course I can do stunt horse riding. Of course I can do that. I'm going to run out and take those lessons. Anyway, so I said, of course I can. And then it was like, oh my God. So, and then it turned into 6 months. But that's where the companion came from. It was like, what I had done was I written an encyclopedia, but they were like, and of course, in my mind, I go back to the making of Star Trek book that Stephen Whitfield Poe wrote. And like, that's the bar in my head. And it's like, oh my God, I'm supposed to write that in 3 months. But we kind of did by hook and by crook, and then got to do the 2 updates after that. So
Wow.
it's just scary to have, like, you pulled that out of your have kids come up to
Out
me
of
now
my
and say,
bookshelf.
out of your bookshelf.
Is that the first time
Nouns.
that the word companion came around? Is that the first use of the terminology companion?
Well, here's the deal. So, a guy named Alan Asherman, who was a pocketbook Simon Schuster regular in science fiction, was an old Trek fan from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He wrote to compete with Bejo's when pocketbooks got the license with the motion picture, and everything went to pocketbook Simon and Schuster with 79. Well, everything before that had been fiction had been at Bantam, and nonfiction had been with Ballantine, like the Tech Manual and Bejo's Concordance and but when everything was going to start fresh with Pocket having the contract, and I think all those really popular books over the years, The Making of and Bejo's Concordance, and they wanted a standalone book that was under their umbrella. So Alan Asherman wrote this book called the Star Trek Compendium, and it was kind of an episode guide, another version of an episode guide for the original series. And then the movies, as the movies came out, they kept adding. So when this came down the line, I'm like, let's not call it the compendium. That might be confusing. Why don't we call it a companion? And I even said, here's some different C words that you can call, the Star Trek catalog. I don't know, whatever they were. But my original idea was that, I would do them all and we'd give them a different name to keep it separate. So 2 things happened after that. Everything after that just got called companion, which isn't really there's the Twilight. Mark Zachary wrote the Twilight Zone companion.
Right.
I think it's a generic word. And other people, different people, all did all the other books. So I didn't have a say in it anyway. But yeah, that's where that's kind of obscure.
So you kind of did come up with the companion label, because I remember the Deep Space Nine companion.
Yeah, well, yeah, Paula and Terry did the DS9 companion. They had talked about me doing it for about 5 seconds, and then they thought, no, let's farm this out and let everybody get in on it, which is cool. And then Paul Ruditis did the Voyager companion.
So, Larry, I don't know who those other 2 people were, Paula and something, for the Deep Space Nine companion.
Paula Block and Terry Jones, right?
Oh, okay.
A lot of
Got it. Also, by the way, thanks for not using compendium, because then we would have all had to look up what that even means. I feel like I'm in the majority where we've all kind of heard that word before, but we don't really know. We're like, that sounds like a word I've heard, but I don't think I've ever learned it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Companion, it's like a teddy bear.
It's easy. Yeah, we're pals.
You and your companion are there on the sofa watching yet more Star Trek.
Let me ask you this, as a Star Trek connoisseur. When Deep Space Nine first popped up in 1992, do you remember your first thoughts, like before it actually aired and when it first aired, when you first saw the pilot? Do you remember?
Well, yes. I'm having flashbacks now to Ira interviewing me for the documentary, which is a compliment, by the way. Yeah. No. I mean, it's like Next Gen got so popular. And then then you would hear, and I was coming out by the end of Next Generation was when I did. The other thing about the TNG companion was I didn't start on it until after the 5th season was done. So that's why the first years are kind of thin. And they said, don't worry, you can add more later in the updates because it'll update. And I went, oh, great. And then we got to the updates and it was like, no, we're not reshooting those pages. Like, guys. So anyway, that's why the further it goes, the fuller everything is. But by the
kind of like Jonathan Frakes, as the season went on, the fuller he got. Anyway, moving on. Sorry.
You said that, I didn't, but yeah, exactly. But by that time, it's like, well, something's going to happen. This is it's a studio. You got a hit show. They're going to have a sequel of some, something follow up. And I didn't exactly know what the details were, but it was like that secret time when everyone is like, throwing mysterious manila envelopes around at each other in the offices and all that. but I didn't really know until it came out. But what was funny was there for a time for about 5 minutes, I was going to do the DS9 companion, and I got sent all the the stuff early. And I was like, oh, it makes total sense to me. I was all fine. And then the PR machine kicked in, and it was all about the darker, grittier Star Trek, and that was kind of the meme of it. And then it premiered, and I was fine. I thought it was great. It was I'd been hearing the writers talk about how hard it was to write Gene's perfect humans. So how do you do a Star Trek drama and keep that going? Well, you just have non-humans. You have non-Federation people. And so the whole thing about it being like everyone comes to Rick's, a Casablanca, or a or a Fort what is it from Gunsmoke? A Dodge City kind of a situation where it's the crossroads and everything is wild and woolly. Made total sense to me. Now I know a chunk of people, it's too dark. It's not heroic. It's the show that didn't go anywhere. Where's the ship? They never go. All of that. I was just like, shut up. This is like got more world building and alien building in it than you'd ever seen before. No, I was fine. I really enjoyed it. It took a while to get used to. And you could tell, like any Star Trek, it took a while just to settle in on its own.
Right.
But no.
Yeah, we're doing the 3rd season. So we're right at that point where it starts getting really juicy.
Defiant showed up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys remember, I mean, you guys know each other, you and Sirach know each other for quite some time, but do you remember where you first met, or do you remember any of that? Must have been a long time ago.
Sirach, I don't know if it'll be easier on my end than yours because you're a blur on all this, I'm sure, with people. But at least, I don't know about like we didn't do like any formal interviews, but I know at least we talked during Take Me Out to the Holosuite, because I came out to the field and did a special kind of a feature for the magazine for Communicator.
Wow, early.
And it was awesome because I knew that you guys, like nobody ever got out of the studio for more than a day or two, but to be out of it for 3 or 4 days, and then like the entire friggin' cast, like all the regulars, all the good recurring people who weren't, bad guys. It was like there's 15 actors out here on location with the crew for 4 or 5 days on a ball field. It was like so bizarre. And anyway, I had a hoot, and I remember I got to ask everybody who wore a uniform. Like, this is the kind of thing that I like to do. This is what my end of things are, because I get mad when nobody else does this. And then I found out that like I was the only one that thought to do it. And then 20 years later, people go like, oh gosh, I'm glad you did that. Everybody had a number, and I was curious where the numbers came from. And I went around and asked everybody where their baseball number came from. And it was from Nana to Colin to Michael and Avery. Everybody had a different thing, and some of them was not a thing. Yeah.
Real quick, speaking of Take Me Out to the Holosuite, just a few days ago, Sirach, I saw a picture. There was just you and Avery on the set of Take Me Out to the Holosuite. And I'd never really looked at it before, but I looked and I saw you guys had different hats. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. Avery's got a San Francisco Giants hat. I was like, that's my favorite team. So I was happy about that. And Sirach, you had a Braves hat.
Yep.
And I was like, wait a minute. Is that because Kenny Lofton was on the Braves way back in the day, or was that for a different reason?
It was part of the reason, yeah. And the reason why Avery had that San Francisco Giants hat on was because of the manager, Dusty Baker.
Yeah, Dusty Baker. We love that dude. Yes.
Yeah. So it was an homage to Dusty for him. That was one of the reasons, if not the main reason, why he decided to go with the Giants. I went with the Braves, and they gave us a choice actually in the beginning of which hat you wanted to wear. And I went with the Braves because I was a Braves fan. I did like David Justice and Kenny Lofton and those guys on that Braves team.
Kenny Lofton is some kind of relative of yours, yeah?
He is a relative of mine. He's been at the opening for my restaurant, and got a chance to play basketball with him at Ball Sports. But he's actually a pretty good basketball player. Played for Arizona, the Wildcats.
Cool.
It's legit, but
Yeah, as soon as I saw that hat, I was like, wait a minute. I remember the Braves always beating the Giants when they're in the same division back in the day. One time the
Yeah.
Braves had 104 wins and the Giants had 103 wins, and the Giants didn't make the playoffs because they're in the same division. That was when it was only the
Yeah. So
anyway.
I didn't have a reason for the number, Larry, but I did have a reason for that hat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
But
you're talking
you
about the
said
hats, because you
yeah,
guys played. You had the Niners hats when you played the game, but all the
right,
scenes of practice, everybody was just wearing
right,
whatever. Yeah.
right. The other thing I wanted to ask you, sorry, is you mentioned working for the Communicator. That's what you said.
Uh-huh.
Working with Star Trek Communicator. Just a little background on that for me.
Oh, well, the Communicator was from Dan Madsen almost got shut down when he tried to start a fan club, like during the Wrath of Khan. Like everybody and their dog had newsletters, like everybody and their dog had websites, or they're doing podcasts now or whatever. And he had a really good one. And early days, before licensing was a big thing, in the Wild West days, Paramount was going to send him a cease and desist letter. And Gene said, why don't we bring him in and have him do that for the studio? So from like the early 80s, and through all the different, changes in the way things were done, from the 80s up until 2005, there was an official fan club that you got your membership card and your certificate, but the biggest, and there was a catalog, and that's how they made their money of stuff, including, by the way, the only place you could buy Niners uniforms for a long time. But then there was a magazine that started off like really basic, and then it grew, and then it went full size. And by the time Dan asked me to be the editor in 1998, it was getting full size, side stitched, and we were selling on newsstands. It wasn't just a membership thing; it was like a newsstand magazine. And I got to be editor I wrote for it a few years before that, and then edited the last 8 years. Decipher, the game company, bought out Dan and kept me going. And then they imploded in 2005. It wasn't because the magazine went down; it was because the parent company went down. So, but yeah, that was and for years and years and years, coming out of the simple days, it was just called Star Trek: The Official Fan Club, the magazine. And finally,
Nice.
about sometime in the 90s, somebody said, "Why don't we make something shorter?" So
yeah, I remember I still have some issues of the Communicator in my archives.
So I do remember that Communicator too, and I feel like I've got some kicking around as well. Now, changing channels a bit, our brother, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, left us 8 months ago now, just about exactly 8 months ago. I just kind of wanted to know what your thoughts were on Nog the character, and the character arc, and any kind of thoughts or perspectives you may have on that, and also your impressions upon actually meeting the wonder that is Aaron Eisenberg.
The wonder. Well, that same shoot, one of my favorite pictures, and it's on some of my pages and sites, is, and this is before phone cams and everybody doing their own thing, and it was cameras were, and Srock, this back in the old days, cameras like no cameras on set, and they'd had the cheapy little Polaroids for the approval pictures, right? Makeups and things, which are crappy. So it's like, I wish digital cameras had been around 10 years earlier, much less cameras on a phone, because we would have had more next gen and DS9, and Enterprise is like the only show that there's a ton of backstage pictures. But when you go on location, the cameras would come out, and so I had mine with me, hoping it wouldn't be a big deal. And we didn't do selfies all the time, but I got someone on my 35 millimeter, my SLR, to take some shots. And the only one that I have that's really good is me interviewing Aaron in his full Ferengi with his hat on in the wardrobe tent. And it's a great shot. And I've got my little recorder sitting here, and we're just laughing. And it's like one of my it's like a rare shot of that era anyway, but it's Aaron, which is awesome. And it's funny, but I knew him, but it was really after the show was over that, in the conventions and all of that I got to know him. And especially, and it grew and grew and grew. And knowing when Lolita and he and Chase and Max were doing the Ferengi Family Hour for those years, and we'd cross paths a lot there, or even be around when they were rehearsing. So yeah, it's and the idea that here's a guy that for a while had this specialty. He turns an illness, right, into an acting plus. So he's an adult playing kid roles. He's very handy for casting people. But then and he has this wonderful experience on DS9, and then pendulum swings, and now it's hard to get roles as an adult playing adults. He's obviously aging, so he can't play teenagers anymore. And his life going back, and then all of his health issues, and then coming out of that, amazingly so, and having all these pluses, and meeting Melissa and all that. But I thought the capper, and then finding this fandom, and social media was so good for him, the social media era, as it's been
Right.
for a lot of people, like a whole new rebirth. But I thought the cherry on top of the cake, and I didn't even think about this at the time, but as soon as that day I heard that he'd passed, just out, so suddenly, I kept thinking about his bit in the documentary, and I was like, wow, because that was just the months before, and I thought, it wasn't planned that way, but it's like, wow, if you ever get like a final statement, to make, if you ever get to come up to a high point and look back in the valley, and get your thoughts across, and also maybe have an impact on people, beyond your life, the way he wanted to do. I thought, wow, if that was if that was the way the script was going to be written for his life, what a last act to have his comments on camera. Some of them even they pull out for the promo bits for the documentary. They're so good, and they're so core of Aaron and core of Trek. Even when DS9 was the Star Trek that was darker and grittier and didn't go anywhere, but it's so life affirming in a lot of ways, and Aaron's embodying that when he's doing his, when he's cutting up, and when he's being faux mad and all of that. But even when he's talking from the heart too, it was all Aaron, but it was all Star Trek, and I just thought it was a great, like I said, like a great final comment for him to make if he had to make one already. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know it was going to be that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Until after, but it's good that we got his words in, and he got a chance to speak.
Now, also, Larry, who was your favorite Star Trek character ever, and why is it Nog?
Well, it's just about okay. So
and Jake, sorry, and Jake.
And Jake. Oh yeah. It's there's that old phrase about you never know what you have until you don't have it anymore. Like we've all had that kind of thing happen, and it just makes those things more special. And it's amazing how so much, just in the world of Star Trek, so much you don't get it at the time until it's past, and you look back, and there's a lot of gems across all of Star Trek. But you really, people, it took a while for people to get like the relationship between you and your dad, Avery and you, Sirach, like as a dad's son, a father and a son of color, but just a father and a son, period, in Star Trek. I mean, a parent and child. I mean, poor Will and poor Gates. I mean, they ham-handedly wrote so much of their relationship, right? It's almost like you guys were like the version 2, and they got to improve on that. But the whole thing with Nog and Jake's friendship, and kind of showing quasi-real, coming out of Ira and Ron and Renee, all those guys, right? Them writing it was a lot more real. It was like Peck's Bad Boys from Space, which is a really old thing. But it was like, it was like the teenage muck-ups who have the hearts of gold, and they have their problems, they scruffs, and they grow up to be great guys, kind of a thing. And to see that across, when usually you think of Star Trek as being all the heroic, officers doing stuff. But for Nog's arc by the time he got to be the first Ferengi in Starfleet from the kid that Odo was trying to throw in the brig every week, it is. I mean, sometimes it took Aaron to remind everybody of that and to frame it. And it's not just, meat boosterism. It's kind of like, no, he's right. Like how many characters in Trek had an arc like that? And, so yeah, it does sneak up on. So the modern shows, like I grew up with 20 years of the original series, and D. Kelly and Dick McCoy were always. I was always an anti-hero, not anti-hero like Clint Eastwood anti-hero, but I mean, like all the big heroes, like Kirk and Spock, they have millions of fans and millions of T-shirts, and like I was always into the who's getting overlooked, and so I was a McCoy and a Scotty fan, and by the time of all the later shows, they're just like pumping them out, and there's great characters and great actors, and I'm knowing the people as well as the characters by then. So, but yeah, after D and McCoy, it's it's Jake and Nog all the way.
All right. Nice. So within the last 50 years of actual Star Trek television, it's Jake and Nog.
Yeah.
within the last 50 years.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
a good one.
Yeah. Wow. By the way, check out
when
that mug that's
threatening a giant self-stealing stem bolt at me here from the back.
You noticed that. I was wondering if I was like, there's no way Larry's not going to know what this is.
If those are square inches, that's a giant self-stealing.
Yeah, this is going to get me a lot of land here, a lot of dirt.
Yeah, that's it.
On Bajor, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, what's this portal thing that you're telling us about? Portal 47?
Well, for years, we all know everything after Enterprise went down and Star Trek went down and everything was kind of a muddle and we had all these years of no Star Trek, but also the world was changing. And I was kidding about Dead Tree Media. And I don't want to say that I was like born at the worst time, but it's like one of those things where the world you were trained in was all changing. And that's fine, I'll adapt. But no one knew what the hell the new world was going to, what the digital revolution was going to be. And so for a lot of years there, I was like, should I just go sell shoes? Because everything I trained in didn't pay anything anymore for a family. And what am I going to do? And I wasn't born coding in my mother's womb. So, there's that. But anyway, Portal 47, I went for years thinking, there's got to be, what can I do? And I had people say, all those, Star Trek, all those people you knew and all that stuff you saw and all that stuff you have, you should do something with that. And I was like, well, what would that be? And they're like, I don't know, figure it out, and, I don't know, we're writing the rule book now. So Portal 47 is basically what finally that became. And I found an entrepreneur coach that could help me put this together. And it's basically, I say this as we're in the COVID time and everyone's figuring out what online streaming is now. But basically, Portal 47 was what I say. It's for all the folks who have no idea how much Star Trek they have no idea about. It's really a behind the scenes, like a mini con all year long. There's a package of features every month. It's a subscription. It's a business. But, and heaven knows I've had my chance at working in Star Trek over the years. But, one-off projects and ongoing things. But it was always part of a big picture. And the big picture all blew up for so long. Now it's coming back. But yeah, Portal 47 is like a mini-con all year long. There's like up to 10 features a month, and 3 of them are live. And at least one night a week or one night a month, we have a guest night. But it's very determinedly not an actor and not one of the highline producers. We have everybody who's across the board, all the shows, all the different aspects, from the creatives, stand-ins, stunt people, secretaries in the buildings, on stage, all across the way, the vendors, people in related fields like promotion. But it's all people that have Star Trek stories, but they're all people that have insights for fans. And again, I say, if you've been around the block and you've got all the autographs you need, it's like, but you still want new and you want fresh Star Trek. Portal 47, the primary Portal 47 layer is your baby, I think. And I've been honing it and, expanding it, but it's grown and we've got a good community. We have at least a couple of when we are allowed to have live events like Vegas or San Diego, we have meetups there, but mostly it's a completely online or what I can send to people by email from my archives. But yeah, and it's and what I didn't even think about was what a great community it is. And I'd like to think that in the times we got really toxic and really insane online, which is still out there, it was also people were thanking me for being, not a safe haven, but just a sane haven. And I want to say and it's been 5 years now, coming up on 5 years. And in the time we started, my whole thing was like getting all this out there that I knew nobody had access to. And the sidebar benefits were people felt comfortable, people found a great group. And we're around the world, we're global, and we bridge time zones. We have, Germans and Brits and Italians and Austrians and Aussies, and everybody's on live together. Now that's kind of becoming like, well, yeah, the last few months.
True.
But for a long time, it's still a big deal. And that was all kind of like just the unintended side benefit of this. But I just knew there was so much. It's like, what's the fastest way to get things out to people? and people that no convention or no magazine or no podcast even are going to want to talk to. Well, now they are, because there's 47 million podcasts, um, but you know what I'm
47
saying?
million and one now.
Yeah. No, but you're ahead of the line, not the back of the line.
By the way, are you going to trademark Sane Haven? That's pretty good.
Saying what?
Sane Haven instead of Safe Haven?
Did I say? Oh, I should. Wow.
Yeah. Otherwise, people are going to beat you to it.
I have a few hashtags that I want to, like the Viacom divorce. That was mine, and texture not trivia is when people get all their panties in a wad about they made a mistake. I go, no. Take the mistake and make it a rare exception. You know, make it the against the grain thing. You know, write it in. Don't walk away and don't have a tantrum. Do it anyway. I keep thinking I'm gonna make black and white, black T-shirts with white letters with Trekland sayings on them.
What's Trekland?
So Trekland, years ago, when I would tell people, we say, you see how easy Dr. Trek was for you to say? Years ago, I would say, well, I'm an author, editor, archivist, interviewer, host, actor, reporter, journal, and people were asleep. And finally, I had some marketing people like 10 years ago when all this started happening. It took me a while to get over it, get my head wrapped around it. But they said, you just need something that fits in a chyron. You need a one line. So I said, okay, what, like the mayor of Trekland or something? We're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's horrible. That is so cheesy. That is so corny. And they're like, no, well, then just say something about, you work in Trekland. And I went, okay. And it is. And now I get it. And that's where Dr. Trek came from. It was like, it's just something it's short and better than saying, 15 words that no one's going to pay attention to anyway. So
for sure.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes left, but I did want to bring up Life Support Live. I must confess, I don't really know much about it. Sirach was telling me about it, but I'm not.
No, I want Larry to explain it. It's a lot better than I am.
Are you sure?
I think so. Please, by all means.
No, this was so when the Corona crazy happened. So we do the Trek Files podcast for Roddenberry, which I love. Maybe get you guys on sometime if we can find a document that out of Gene's files that fits. And my Trekland Tuesdays live Facebook show that I do every Tuesday live at 1:00. So I've done those for 2 or 3 years. But for Corona crazy time, I wanted to kind of step up and put more out there. I think everybody's feeling, whatever we do, do more of it. So Fridays, we have a NonFiction Fridays Trek meetup on Zoom, which is a lot of fun. There's a Facebook page for that. But here's this thing about silver lining. So when WonderCon was canceled, I had set something a little different, a panel with my friend Dr. Ali Matu, who's kind of a geek psychologist. He brands himself that way. He's been on Netflix and BuzzFeed and another as a talking head on shows for fun. And he has a YouTube show called The Psych Show. And we were going to do a panel on Star Trek and mental health, looking at especially Picard, because everybody was so broken on Picard. And they get better. But so when WonderCon goes away, I said, well, you want to do a virtual panel? And he said, well, okay, but why don't we see about doing this as a podcast, as a camera podcast? And I love the idea. And like I said, it's my whole life. I love world building and I love the making of and all of that. But I feel like finally, here's something about really biting in to help people, like some analysis, not analysis like on the couch, but do some Trek geekery through a mental health lens on different themes. And then Ali comes in, like I'm Dr. Trek, he's Dr. Ali. One of us is a real doctor. That's where we come from. And he has an away mission briefing of here's some things you can do. And we have different themes and different, we'll look at a character or a show. And we've only done 6. If you guys haven't heard, it's only been out about 6 weeks. We're only about to do the 7th this week.
Oh, okay.
But and it's not, we decided rather than do it like at night on a weeknight, we're doing it at noon Pacific on Saturdays. So it's noon, 3 Eastern, 8 o'clock in the UK. And it's live. And we have our theme and we have different bits. We go from the ready room to the briefing to the away mission, his counselor's log. And then my K3 factor was just still a little more behind the scenes goodness in the theme. but we have chat and we're multi-streaming. So we're doing YouTube and Facebook and Twitch, which is new to me.
Wow, you're on Twitch.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've got like 4
Sirach's down with Twitch, man.
Down with the Twitch.
I'm just trying to get the Twitch. Like it's easy to say, oh, gamers, but there are a lot of people doing Twitch shows that had nothing to do with gaming. So it's kind of like, yeah, got to master this. So yeah, we have 4 or 5 followers on Twitch now. But anyway, so it's live. People can chat in, but people can also call in on Skype and be, on camera with us too. So I'm just really proud because I know we haven't broken out yet because it's still a lot of like his community and my community who are coming. But I really want to get to Trek people who are hurting anyway, or they're just like, everybody is just like, ugh, right now in the Corona time. And even though it feels like it's getting better, I'm hoping we don't rush. And I'm hoping there's not this big, back step of opening too fast and having things spike again, or having things spike with the, the dreaded deadlier second wave kind of thing, like with the Spanish flu. So anyway, I'm really excited about being with something where we're doing more than worrying about how far apart the braid stripes are on the cuff of this dress uniform. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you getting response of people being helped by the program and talking about these mental issues?
It's, and again, it's not like hardcore, like he would be the first to say that he can't diagnose from, a live session. We had the first week, somebody from some Middle Eastern country was on with us and was talking about and it wasn't a flake, it wasn't a poser. They were really kind of shook, and he said, help me. Someone just got shot in front of my building and there's a commotion outside and I don't feel safe. And he talked to him it wasn't like it wasn't like top 10 movie fodder, but it was really kind of amazing in the moment. And the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, this is some kid on Twitch that's just leading us on. But it was a YouTube person, and he stayed on, and they talked back and forth for a long time. And we kept it light for everybody. But yeah, overall, I keep saying there's no Psych 101 quiz the next day. It's a light show, but there's a lot of little pieces that we both offer. And when he gets off too much in the deep end, I try to kind of pull it back and but it hasn't been a problem that way. I mean, I'm really excited about how we've had this nice balance of, like I said, it's one of those things where it's like everybody, like my friend Dr. Aaron now, that tries to sneak a little science at you.
McDonald?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've had her.
Yeah. She just did some Trek Files with us, so that's exciting. But you know what I mean? It's like, here's yet more of the good that Star Trek can do. Sneak a little history, sneak a little psychology, sneak a little science at you when you're not expecting it.
And where can the fans check you out? Check this out.
Well, my LarryNemecek.com is like overall hub, and Trek on Facebook is Larry Nemecek's Trekland. That's my Instagram. My Twitter is @Larry Nemecek. But there is a Facebook page for Life Support Live, and there's a Facebook page for NonFiction Friday, and there's a Facebook page for the Trek Files. I mean,
Wow. So you got it all. You got it all covered.
Yeah. We're trying, man. We're trying. I was there when I was like totally clueless. So I'm trying to soak it up and do the right thing these days.
Life Support Live. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great title.
Yeah, that was one of those things. It's like the hardest thing is coming up with, because we wanted to be Trek-ish, but not like hit you over the head Trek, and not like run afoul of CBS Trek. So. So yeah, we say our tagline, we say Life Support Live. Our mission is to boldly go through uncertain times.
Okay. But I do like the title for Portal 47, because we all know where the 47 came from in Star Trek lore. So we do have to run real quick. But before we go, Mr. Larry Nemecek, can you give us a parting shot of your favorite Jake and Nog moment? If you need some time to think about it, we can stall. I know we threw that one at you last second.
You did when you were younger. I just think, I think I don't know about a moment, but I think the epitome, I just call it the Radar O'Reilly show. and I can't think of the name of the title, but it's when it's the self-stealing Steamboat show.
Oh, okay, sure.
It's when the barter, and you
Yeah,
wind
yeah,
up
yeah.
with the wacky scientist with the.
Yeah.
That's not even a moment so much as it is like that episode. But I was
Mhm.
just like, wow, and it has the lions and tigers and Geiger and
Yeah,
lions.
a little bit of
also-
everything.
And Ryan, for the people that don't know, 47 is a reference to.
It's a number that pops up a lot in Star Trek. It'll be like Space Station 47 or Shields at 47%, or 47 just pops up a lot. I'm sure Larry can tell us that it's popped up 347 times in Star Trek or something like that.
I could say that. It might not be. No, it's Joe Benoski Pomona College thing that Joe brought to Next Generation, and then it spread, and they've even had it on the new. They've even, not as much, but they've even had it on the new show. Like,
Yeah, we've heard on the new
and
stuff. Yeah.
dialogue both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep my eye out for the 47.
Yeah, keep your ears open.
I bet Jake said at least 147 somewhere in 7 years. I bet.
I'll be looking for it.
Oh my God, that is something. That
That's
moment
something,
when we find it, Sirach, that's going to be the best.
That'll be the best. That'll be the best.
This is your 47 moment. So,
Yes. Put it on our non-appearance mention list.
Yeah, that's true. We could have 47 as a non-appearance mention. So, Larry, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great time. You're always a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you.
Make it easy on us because you're so entertaining and fun.
you guys. Hey, listen, thanks. I'm glad you guys were able to put all your best feet forward and keep moving on after we lost Aaron. This is it's done does a lot of good for a lot of people. I only hope some of the things I'm doing can have the impact and help people, even if it's just brighten their day a little bit. That you guys are doing here every week, or every episode. So good on you.
Well, thank you, Larry. Great. So check them out, guys. We'll leave all that information in the description box below of this video. And for those of you at home, always remember the 7th rule.